Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next installment of The Doctor Will See You Now. Do you like to wander a little bit further away from home in your reading and with your authors? Because if you do, well, our session will do just that. A little bit of a time difference and a little difference in space. And how exciting it is. Stacy Willingham. Stacy, welcome to the consultation. It's an absolute delight to have you here. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm great. I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So just by way of a brief introduction, Stacy worked as a copywriter and a brand strategist for various marketing agencies before deciding to write fiction full-time. What an absolutely gorgeous decision to be able to do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a dream come true. I feel very, very fortunate every day.
And for those of us who enjoy good writing, and in particular on this channel, good crime writing, we're just so grateful that, that there are those of you who can dedicate yourself to the craft like that. Fabulous.
Yeah, it's
Please go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's wonderful because everyone writes differently, of course, but for me, I'm very much a writer that I'll get on streaks. And so when you're kind of having to find these little stolen spaces throughout the day to write early in the morning or late at night or on your lunch break, it can be hard to get out of that mind space. So I do feel very lucky now that I can kind of sit down every morning and work throughout the day. It helps me tremendously.
Yeah, the previous author in consultation, he has a day job, and he was saying about this, that to have that headspace, to be able to concentrate, immerse yourself, be in that world that you've created and not have to get out because you need to go do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so special. Yeah. So you earned a BA in magazine journalism from the University of Georgia and an MFA in writing from the Savannah College of Art and Design. And are you coming to us from Georgia now? Are you in Georgia?
No, I'm actually in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. This is where I grew up. I live about 20 minutes from my parents' house, another 15 minutes from my sister's house. So we're all kind of situated here. But I did live in Georgia for several years, 4 years at university, a couple years immediately upon graduation, and then I made my way back.
Back home. Great, great. Now
Yeah.
we're here to discuss your highly successful debut, and I'm going to let you tell us just how successful this has been. A
Sure.
Flicker in the Dark. So I
I have it
wonder.
right here.
Oh, thank you, because I've been kindling.
Yeah, of course.
Gorgeous! Look at that. That
I love it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you get to have input on the cover?
A bit, but HarperCollins over in UK they're just fantastic. I have little to no feedback anytime they send me anything, which makes it really easy for me. But they did let me kind of explain my vision a little bit. One thing that is really prevalent in the book in terms of imagery and symbolism is fireflies. And I told them that I kind of envisioned the cover having fireflies on it, and the US cover had fireflies on it. So they did a really neat, I'm not sure how well you can see, but their own kind of
Yeah,
take on
yeah.
that with the little flickers in the trees. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's eye-catching, and I love it.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So tell us, if you will, we'll sit back and make ourselves comfy. We'd love to know that journey, okay, to the point of publication that
Yeah.
this story went on. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, it's so funny talking about A Flicker in the Dark because you write books so much earlier than they actually come
Mm-hmm.
out. So at this point, at this point, the books I started it probably about 5 years ago. And it took me about 3 years, 2 years probably, to get a first draft done. And I got my agent in February of 2020.
Mhm.
And then we worked on editing it together for a while. Got my US deal in June of 2020, and then my UK deal followed just a couple weeks later. And then it's about 18 months from deal to publication. So yeah, so at this point, it's been out for 8 months, 7 months, 8 months, and it's been a whirlwind. It's so funny. It's very much like all this waiting for years and years, and then as soon as the book comes out, it's like it happened all at once, and I'm now finally getting the opportunity to kind of breathe because the promotion and things have kind of calmed down at this point, but it's about to start back up again in a couple months now for my second book. But in a nutshell, the idea of A Flicker in the Dark came to me because I've always been very interested in psychology,
Mhm.
specifically criminal psychology. I took a abnormal psychology class in college that talked a lot about nature versus nurture and psychopaths and sociopaths and things like that. And I always found it really fascinating when I was kind of watching a true crime documentary or watching a movie. I would always focus on the villain of the story and try and understand what made them a villain, like what
Mhm.
happened in their lives that made them
Yeah.
like that. And for that reason, I started getting very interested in serial killers, not so much their crimes, but why they turned out like that to begin with. And I was watching a documentary one day about serial killers, and there was a picture that came up on the screen of Dennis Rader.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with him.
No, not at
Not
all. Yeah.
okay. Yes. So he's a horrible but very infamous serial killer here in the U.S. And I think he had about 10 victims. And by the time he was caught, it was found out that he had a wife, he had a daughter, he was a deacon in his church. He
Whoa.
was, yeah. I mean, the last person you would ever think to be capable of such horrible crimes. And in that documentary, there was a picture of him walking his daughter down the aisle at her wedding. And at that point, he had been an active serial killer for years, and his whole family, they had no idea. And seeing that picture really, I almost have goosebumps right now talking about it.
I have them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whoa. Yeah.
it just made me realize that the families of serial killers, specifically the daughters, have a very, very unique viewpoint when it comes to telling the story of a serial killer, because it's not just a monster to them. It's the emotions behind the way they would see him and feel about him would be very, very complicated. So that was the initial light bulb came from seeing that picture and wanting to tell the story of a serial killer through the eyes of his daughter.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
us.
Mhm.
Wow. I don't think that serial killer, I don't think he's made it. Don't think he's made it big in the UK yet. I, you know, I,
Yeah.
yeah. I wondered as well, the idea of how long it took, because we'll just come back to the success of this debut novel.
Mhm.
Because am I right that I read that Emma Stone wants to
Yeah.
take it into
Yeah.
movie? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Emma Stone, and this happened in July of 2020, so about a month after I got my book deal and a year and a half before it was even published. Yeah, Emma Stone optioned it, and so it's for years now, about almost 2 years now. She's had the option, and she's working with A24 to hopefully develop it into a TV show. So
Oh,
that's been incredible.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I think, that it it lends itself so beautifully to that kind of structure. If one can talk
Mhm.
about the subject matter, but
Yeah.
yeah, I can see it would be extremely successful. So, fingers crossed that it comes to
I know, me too. It would be amazing, but to your point, there's a few things about the book I think that do lend itself well to the screen. The setting is a pretty big
Mhm.
piece of the book itself, so it's easy to kind of visualize a lot of the chapters, I think. And there's such a wide cast of characters that all have very intricate backstories, and
Yeah,
I think they could have a lot of fun with that as
yeah,
well.
Totally, totally. And you bring us wonderfully to the notion of the setting and your choice of that. So it's the Louisiana swamps, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and let's face it, you know, of all the states, you know, that you had to choose from in that vast, awesome country that is the United States of America, why the Louisiana swamps? Because there's swamps elsewhere, are there not?
Yes, there are. And it's funny, South is very, very a lot of times people talk about the South, the American South, as kind of just a blanket statement, but it's very different. And every region of the South is very unique. So I live in South Carolina, which is very, very different from Louisiana, which is different from Mississippi, which is different from Florida. They all have their own personality. But I always knew I wanted to write about the South just because I live here, and it's very distinct. There's very, very distinct sounds and feelings and smells and animals, and it's just kind of wild out here. And I get a lot of inspiration from going outside and, you know, sitting on my parents' dock and kind of looking out at the water and listening to the cicadas and the crickets and seeing things just kind of like slithering around in the water. And there's a lot of visualizations that I kind of draw from that. But for some reason, this story didn't strike me as being set in South Carolina. So I was trying to think about where else I could set it that was similar, but the feel was different. And the swamps of Louisiana, the bayou, really felt right to me because it's very, very unique over there. It's a very distinct place and it's gorgeous, but it's also quite dangerous if you venture too deep into those swampy areas. And there was something about the idea of these really dangerous things kind of lurking just beneath the surface and being hidden in plain sight that I felt really lent itself well to the subject matter of the book. And there's one chapter in the book that's set at a crawfish festival. And I chose Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, specifically because I was doing a bunch of research on small little towns in the state of Louisiana because I wanted it to have a very small town feel. And I came across Breaux Bridge, which is the crawfish capital of the world. And that is so Louisiana. Like, it's a very, very unique thing. And they have this crawfish festival every year where they have, you know, people are eating crawfish prepared in all these different ways, and they have crawfish races. And I just thought I could really latch on to that. And I saw this scene just kind of appear in my head. And that's when I decided I wanted to set it there.
Yeah. Have you been to Sample?
Yeah, I've not been to the festival. I would love to go, but I have been to Breaux Bridge. I've been to Louisiana several times. When I was writing this book, I was working full time, so unfortunately, I couldn't really take research trips over there. So I relied on memories from when I've been to Louisiana in the past, my own kind of, you know, the sights and smells of the South around me. And then I spent quite a lot of time on Google Satellite View, just kind of crawling through the streets of Breaux Bridge. So it's pretty effective if you're writing and you're not able to actually visit the place you're going. I could get a pretty good feel of what the town looked like that way.
I think so many, and this to me then is testament to, you know, an author's creativity, because I think especially, you know, during the COVID times where making research trips just came to an end. And yet people were very ingenious and found ways to take us there, even if they hadn't managed to make that trip. So thank you, because I think, you know, for I'm thinking especially for British readers, you know, we don't get a chance to go to Louisiana much in our stories. So you gave us that. I just so long as Louisiana knows that, you know, there's nice people and places in Louisiana as well.
No, it's a wonderful place.
Not just Stacy's take on it.
Thankfully, I've heard from several people who live in Breaux Bridge. I was a little scared because I was like, gosh, I hope they don't think I'm just like dropping this serial killer in their town. But most people that I've heard from in Breaux Bridge and from Louisiana thought it it felt pretty accurate to their
Beautiful.
town. And yeah, it's a wonderful place.
Yeah, well done, well done.
Thank
Now
you.
you've spoken to us a little bit about the father-daughter dynamic,
Hmm.
and then that notion of the serial killer. I wonder if I, we could just pause a little bit on the father-daughter dynamic, because this is the the previous author that I've interviewed. It was a father-daughter dynamic,
Mm.
and then a while back I talked to an Irish author. It was a father-daughter dynamic, and I wonder why father-daughter and not father-son.
Oh, that's an interesting question. For me, I want to say exclusively because I don't know what my future books hold, but I write in the point of view of young women
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
because that's just what my worldview is.
yeah.
And I've always been interested in family dynamics, just the idea of what is what does your family and your upbringing bring into, how does it kind of piece together your own personality and affect your worldview and affect your future. And for me, I thought the father daughter dynamic in a situation where your father is a serial killer was fascinating because that would have so many kind of trickle down effects in
Yeah.
every aspect of your life. So for Chloe, our main protagonist, I thought about things like, okay, what if oftentimes, serial killers they come from an abusive family or they're abusive themselves. But in Chloe's situation, she had a really happy childhood. So she had these kind of clashing points of view in her mind, where on the one hand she has this loving father who she has wonderful memories with, but on the other hand she realizes that he's not at all who she thought he was, and he's really quite evil. And so how did she miss those red flags? And then once she starts stewing on that, she has a hard time trusting her instincts when it comes to anything, when it comes to forming relationships in the future, when it comes to her job choice. And so I thought that was really interesting how her father was kind of this, someone actually described it to me once as this off the page antagonist, because her father's not actually really in the story in the present tense all that much, but he's always kind of hovering over her shoulder, and she feels him constantly. Every time she does something or makes any decision, she kind of feels him like over her shoulder like that. But it's
So a minute,
oh,
so a minute, yeah. Just probably about another 20 minutes.
Sorry,
So-
we'll be back in about 10.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, that's my security. Sorry about that.
okay, no worries.
but we'll snip. Don't worry. So let's go back. Talking about Chloe and how her dad, that time difference, how he's not present. So yeah.
So someone once described to me her father as an off the page antagonist, which I actually thought was the perfect way of describing him, because he is present in the past tense scenes. She has all kinds of memories with him, but in the present day, he's in jail. And so he's not actually in the story, but he's always kind of hovering over her shoulder. And those memories of him are with her constantly, and they're kind of coloring the way she's seeing the world, in the present day story kind of unfold around her. And kind of a fun fact that readers might enjoy hearing is a lot of Chloe's memories with her father are real memories that I actually have with mine. Because because I tried to, I had a wonderful upbringing and a great childhood, and I'm very close with both of my parents. And I really tried to put myself in her shoes and think, like, if my father ended up being evil beyond comprehension, how would I look back on these happy memories and see them differently?
Yeah.
And so I gave her a lot of those memories that I have, because I tried to look back on those memories that really stand out in my mind as good times and wonder, just think about how tricked I would feel if they all turned out to be a lie. So for me, that's why I focused on that father-daughter dynamic, because it's just something I intimately know.
Yeah. So, and again, you see, having read the book, immense read, but knowing now that the good parts from your experience.
Yeah, the good parts.
Yeah.
Not the bad parts. The good
I was going to say,
parts.
you are sure your dad's not a serial killer yet?
Yeah, I get that. I even had to put in my acknowledgments. I was like, Please don't jump to any conclusions about my family here. They're wonderful people. All the bad parts are made up. The good parts, many of them are true.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, just coming back to that notion of of having the serial killer there, that present, and there have been discussions in the recent past that, are we not done with the serial killer? And clearly we're not. And clearly we are very much engaged with this. Were you, as the book, came into being, were you ever concerned of like, oh, my story just, it's not going to ride?
That's a really good question. And the serial killer, as we kind of think of it, is not doesn't quite exist in quite the way it did back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And for that reason, there's a 20-year gap between the present tense of the story and the past tense of the story. So in the past, when Chloe's father is an active serial killer, it's actually in the 90s. So that helped a bit, because it was before, there's all kinds of things now that make it harder for a serial killer like that to get away with their crimes, technology being the biggest. And when the past story is set in the 90s, that technology didn't quite exist the way it does now. So I think that helped me quite a bit, setting the serial killer portion of the story in the past. But of course, there's the copycat crimes that pop up in the present. And I don't think I ever had a moment where I thought this isn't going to work, but I had to think pretty hard on how to make it work, and how to make it work in a way that was realistic.
Yeah. You did, which is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So you have a past and a present, and it's the 12-year-old Chloe, and then the 32-year-old Chloe, and I was intrigued at, because in that 20-year difference, we are still who we are, but we do change.
Yeah.
And I wondered about that, finding the voice for the younger and the older Chloe. How did you do that?
Yeah, I had thought about that quite a bit, because I realized as I was writing the younger Chloe that I wasn't really changing her voice a lot. I wasn't making her very childish. I think she comes across as pretty mature, and pretty intuitive, and very smart. But at the same time, she has an innocence, and she's a bit naive, in a way that 12-year-olds are. So that was the biggest change, is I think as an adult, after going through the things that she went through in her childhood, she's a little bit cynical. She's kind of paranoid. She's just kind of scared. I mean, she's just kind of this scared little girl that has grown up, but she's very sheltered because she had these horrible things happen to her, and she never quite faced them head on, in the way that she should have, to fully heal. But as a little girl, she's still the same person. I mean, she's very smart. She's very in tune with her surroundings, but she hasn't experienced evil in a way yet to make her quite as cautious as she is as an adult. And I think that's the biggest change, is as a child, she's very trusting. She's not really looking twice at people the way she is 20 years later.
Yeah. Now we get the finished version, and what a delight, as I say, it is. The ins and outs, those moments of and I just wondered if you can share with us, what aspect of the novel did you feel you had to wrangle the most into submission for it to fit with what you wanted it to be?
Yeah, the ending, 100%, because I'm more of a pantser than a plotter, but I go into my stories knowing I have the general idea, and I usually have the ending, I have the twist, because I need to know what it is that I'm working towards. But everything in the middle kind of comes to me as I go. And I think with that reason, as I write, I'm kind of sprinkling these little clues in there. And at a certain point, I realize, I have 30 clues that I now need to wrap up and turn it into the ending. And I put them in there intentionally, but it's tough trying to wrap them up in a way that feels you know, I don't want my endings to be rushed,
Yes.
but also I need to, and that's what's hard for me, is really forcing myself to take my time with the ending. Because at a certain point, I think, okay, now's the time to start wrapping it up. And it's tempting to just wrap it up. But then when I go back and read it from the beginning, it's this, you know, this slow unravel. And then it's like, whoa, like that, I wrapped that up in like 10 pages. So a lot of times I have to go back and force myself to draw it out and make the ending hopefully as satisfying as the first 3/4 of the book. And that takes for me many drafts. I think it probably went through drafts until I finally felt satisfied with the ending. But now that it's complete, I love the ending. I mean, I think it's nice, and you know, after forcing myself to take my time with it and not get too excited about it, I hope it came out the way I intended it to.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think it makes it all the sweeter. You know, you know what it took to get it to be that. And I you know, and I think, you know, that observation that you make, I think sadly, you know, not all authors do take that time, and whether it's because of deadline or, you know, or any other kind of constraint, that often you get the feeling of, oh, we're heading towards the end of this, and it needs to finish, and we need to do it now, instead of just like, oh, you know, let's just savor this. Do we need to rush? Because, you know, take your time. It's
It is, and I don't know how other writers write. We all have our own kind of process, but for me, I think it's because, as a pantser at least, when I sit down to write, I don't exactly know what the next few pages are going to bring. So I am kind of taking my time, because as I'm writing and I'm describing things, I'm figuring it out at the same time what is coming next. But when I get to the ending, I know I have the pieces already, and now it's just my job to put them all together in the right spot. And so I think because I know what I need to do, I have a tendency to do it quicker, and I don't quite know what I need to do when I'm writing the book until that point. And so it comes together very fast, and then I just have to force myself to then go back and stretch it out. It's definitely the editing phase is where the ending comes together. It's always very messy in the first draft.
But it comes beautifully. Well, we got the beautiful thing, so this is good.
Thank you. That's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I asked you the tricky thing, but at any point along the way, start to finish, or even in its, you know, even in that the conception of the story, what is the aspect that just gives you the most joy, that just makes you think, oh my God, I did that. That's amazing.
You know, there's something about, I guess I have two answers for this. One is when I look at this, sometimes I think to myself, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote this. You know, I mean, I'll just kind of crack it open and read it. And it's shocking, honestly, sometimes that I wrote something of this length and something that I'm proud of. And I think when it's a Word doc in front of you, it feels messy, and something about it doesn't feel or real. But then once you're holding it in your hand and it's real, I just am very proud of the entire finished product. But when it comes to maybe like a very specific part of the book, I mentioned that doing the research into Louisiana and Breaux Bridge, I came across that crawfish festival scene, and or the crawfish festival in Breaux Bridge, and I had this scene in my head of Chloe at the crawfish festival and meeting Lena, who is her father's first victim, for the very first time. And that chapter, I wrote it in such a rush of inspiration, and I don't think a single word changed. I think it's probably the only chapter that I never had to edit or tinker with. Like, that was just the light bulb moment, really, of this is where I need to set it, and I need this scene here, and these are kind of my characters. And I just love that chapter so much because it feels very authentic to me. It was the original idea, and I got it down, and I stuck with it, and I never really had to change that chapter at all. So I love that one.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, we touched on the fact that it's there, it's been optioned, that prospect of adaptation, and it might seem a little trite question, but I'm intrigued to know, If you could choose of all the array of stars that we have, who would you have for Chloe?
Oh man, that's so hard. I have heard that question a lot, and I still don't have a good answer for it. I don't know why, but
Shall I give you the possibility of 3? Would that help if you could?
that would help. That would help, because I think I don't see Chloe as a specific person. To me, what matters is an actor who can play her, like, her little nuances, you know. So as soon as I almost feel like once I hear an actor, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's it. But I have a hard time coming up with who it should be.
It'd be great to see if, you know, when it happens, because I'm a firm believer in saying when, not if. Because you know,
I like that.
So when this happens, and you know, because we can do, you know, I know we can trust the people whose world that is, but it would be wonderful for you to say, I heard them and I thought, yep, you know, having you said that
yeah. And then, you know, that's the other thing too, is I'm you know, I'm limited by the actors I'm familiar with from the types of things that I've seen. Whereas you know, Emma and A24, they do this for a living, and they could very much pluck someone that I've never even heard of before, and they could be perfect for it. So I don't know, I feel I trust them with what they're doing. You know, they know what they're doing. That's not my world. I'm just kind of excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you should say that, because being familiar with you know, the work of Anne Cleeves, and having talked with Anne a lot about adaptation and things, and Anne, you know, is very much of that. You know, she, you know, the book was mine. I gave my book to the world, and the people then who wish to take that and do something with it's their, you know, it's their privilege to do so.
Yeah, I think that is that was the way my agent told me to look at it. And I, you know, at a certain point I do feel a sense of ownership over it, and of course I want it to come out and be something that I love, but at the same time it's out of my control. You know, the book is mine, and that's what's in my control. Once I release it to someone else to bring to the screen, I don't have any control over that. So I'm just along for the ride. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. But I do feel very lucky that the team that is behind the adaptation is one that I have a lot of faith in. I love A24. I love Emma Stone's work. So it's not like it's in the hands of people that I don't think can do it justice.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's probably wrong to do this, but I'm always intrigued when I've read an author whose work just makes me think, oh, yes, come along, what's next? You've already mentioned that, you know, that's there. So All the Dangerous Things?
Yes, All the Dangerous Things. I wish I had, I haven't received my ARC from HarperCollins yet, so I don't have a physical cover to show you, but I do know the cover reveal is going to be happening fairly soon.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'll be out in February, I believe, of next year, 2023. And I'm really excited about it. It is, it's pretty different than A Flicker in the Dark, but I think if you enjoyed A Flicker in the Dark, you'll enjoy All the Dangerous Things, because there are elements to it that are the same. It's another, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you taking us elsewhere, or are you sticking in Louisiana?
Elsewhere, but still in the American South. So I'm kind of inching my way closer to home. This one is set in Savannah, Georgia, as well as Beaufort, South Carolina. So another little kind of small southern town with a very distinct feeling to it. Very different from Louisiana, but very distinct. And yeah, so it's set in the South. It has past and present intertwining storylines, very similar to A Flicker in the Dark. And it's about a woman named Isabel who wakes up in the morning to find her worst fear realized. Her son has been taken out of his crib in the middle of the night while she was sleeping. Yeah. And so the next year that goes by, she is doing everything in her power to try and find him, try to figure out what's happened. And in the process, because she was asleep when he was taken, she finds herself unable to fall asleep, and she's dealing with a severe case of insomnia. So yeah, it talks a lot about kind of the hard days of early motherhood and sleep deprivation and you know, family trauma and all those good things.
As you speak these words, you know, from Facebook and Twitter, I know there are just so many readers out there that will identify with Isabel's sleep situation.
Yeah.
And I think from what I'm hearing, you know, I know that their sleepless nights, you know, they'll have a good book to be reading, you know.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds so. February, we should look out for that, yeah?
February, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. I'm sure you'll start seeing the cover sooner than that, in the next couple weeks, if not a month or so from now. But yeah, it'll be on sale in February.
Brilliant. But in the meantime, we have to. I urge you, readers, listeners, take a trip to Louisiana for a flicker in the dark. Stacy, I have one last question, if
Yeah.
you know, if I may. I read in your bio that you have a dog.
I do.
Mako, how?
Mako, yeah, he's actually named after a Mako shark.
So I tend to ask authors this if I know they have a pet. Does he keep you company? Does he participate in your writing process?
Oh yeah. He does. He keeps me company. I'm shocked that he's remained quiet throughout this entire conversation, because he's just on the other side of that door laying on the floor. But yeah, he keeps me company, and I don't know what I would do without him, honestly, because writing is a pretty solitary career. I am, you know, by myself all day, every day, often not speaking to anyone until my husband gets home at the end of the day. And it's just nice to have Mako there. You know, he'll come up to me and kind of put his little chin on my leg when I'm writing, and when I need to step away or I have writer's block, I usually put his leash on him and we go for a long walk. Yeah. And so yeah, he's fantastic. You'll see me thanking him in the acknowledgments of all the dangerous things, because I couldn't have done it without him.
I love that partnership. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
The aspect of well-being that is taken care of by my dog. Yeah,
absolutely. He's my coworker. I mean, we really do. We spend all day together. We take our lunch breaks together. It's great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Stacy, it has been an absolute delight to spend time together. I really appreciate you taking time out to join us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I am just so glad that HarperCollins put a copy of your work my way. I have another author now whose work, you know, I await eagerly.
Thank you.
No, it's thanks to you and your work. And I look forward, should fate and destiny ever allow, that we actually get to meet face to face. The screen is a wonderful thing. You know, I'm so glad, as I've said before on this channel, you know, COVID did give us this possibility, showed us that we could do this. But who knows, maybe one day our paths will cross.
I hope so. I'll take a page out of your book, like you said earlier. It will happen. It's not if, but when. So it will happen.
We have a deal. Okay. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.